Welcome to the Average John podcast, a podcast about mindset, growth and finding meaning as an ordinary guy becoming better. If you've ever felt stuck, unfulfilled or like there's more in you, come and follow along. Please like, comment and subscribe to be a part of the journey, and let's grow together. Welcome to the first official episode of the Average John podcast. Now, in this episode, I'm going to be explaining basically who I am, where I've been, and what the podcast is all about. I've got some notes, but I think we're just going to go for it and leave it unscripted to a degree, because I want this to be honest, real, authentic. I don't want it to be too scripted. Mostly I'll be using notes just to kind of remind myself of some ideas so that I don't, freeze and don't know what to say and there's awkward long pauses, because we don't want that. So yeah, it's going to be broken down to my background, which is going to be struggles with weight, mental health and identity. It's going to be why I started this journey of growth and also, I suppose, the podcast. It's going to be what I've tried in the past or what I've done in the past that didn't work. It's going to be the aha moments or the light bulb moments related to therapy, spiritual growth or spirituality, and then music as well. And then there's going to be what you guys, the listeners or the viewers, can expect from future episodes. So yeah, let's dive in at the first one. So the first one is my background. For as long as I can remember, I've always been the fat kid. I can remember the only time I can remember not having a belly is there is a picture of me when I was about 5 years old, I think, just about starting school. So I think it was primary one. So the first year of school, 5 years old, there's a picture of me sitting on the worktop with just a glass of juice, and I've got a flat stomach, if you will. That's the only time in my life I can ever remember being like that. So since then, I've always been overweight. I've always struggled with weight, and I've loved food. I used food basically for dealing with my emotions, no matter whether that was anger, stress, sadness, anything like that. Food was kind of used as a crutch, and also just a source of joy. So if I felt like I needed happiness, I needed release, I needed relief, food was the kind of thing that I would go for. I always felt self-conscious and sensitive. There was a fair few occasions when I was growing up that I just broke down in tears due to sheer embarrassment, and that kind of cements the self-conscious and sensitivity that I had. And at the time I didn't understand why. I didn't really think about it, but it also happened to me before I went to therapy. As an adult, it happened where I felt that embarrassed and that upset that I broke down in tears. And it was quite a public setting and also quite a masculine setting. So yeah, I ended up breaking that down in therapy kind of years later, and that was a big help, and a big step to understanding myself, which I believe is the core foundation for any sort of personal development and growth, is to be aware and have an understanding of yourself and why the way you are, because it just means you've then got at least what you're trying to better, what you're trying to overcome, and the reasons why. So that helps massively. So on to question number 2, or section number 2, why I started this journey. I suppose this is quite a short, it's a couple of points I've got here. I constantly felt like I had more potential than what I was living up to. I always felt I should be doing better. I have something in me that I'm not living out, that I'm not living up to. I have standards there, or at least the ambition there to achieve high standards, but I'm just not doing it, and I don't know why. So that was always there, and I think when I finally addressed that to say, I should keep myself to higher standards, that was a starting point. Also, my marriage. I've been married just for 13 years in Monday there, so happy anniversary again, Sheldo. It was starting to break down. And for years, like my wife had lost a respect for me, and at the time, I struggled to contemplate that. But when I look back, it's I didn't have respect for myself, so how could I expect other people to have that kind of deep rooted or deep seated respect for me? Um, I knew something had to change, and I kept saying there would come points where I would get really low, and I would openly admit, right, I need to get help, or I need to do something. Something needs to change, and then it would be, just back to work on Monday, as if we'll put that later. And that happened for a number of years. Procrastination, effectively. I just kept putting it off. Um, one of the major points that was a very rude awakening or realization is I had started to get fleeting thoughts, is the best way to describe it. So they weren't dominating thoughts day to day, but um they were starting to come up more often, and they basically were, to put it together. I mean, they kind of changed. They were a little bit all over the place, but when I look back and kind of group them, the kind of main theme of them was the best I can do for my wife and family is to get my life insurance cashed in, because that'll kind of solve problems. That'll solve the problems. So realizing that that's where your head is at or going towards was a point that was very much, you really need to do something about this, like now, before that gets worse. So yeah, that was why I started the journey of, personal growth, self discovery, and I suppose like wanting to perform high in life. The next part, what I have tried in the past that didn't work, or what I've done that didn't work. I suppose there's three things here. The first one was ignoring the signs. So those times where I'd be weeks on end, just binging, and I say binging as in binge eating, binge watching TV, if you will, binge sleeping. Like I was getting to the stage where there'd be weeks on end and I had achieved nothing. All my responsibilities were out the window. I didn't do anything. I didn't really get out of bed. And just, yeah, I wasn't doing anything, and I ignored those signs. Um, so it doesn't work. Just being an ostrich and putting your head in the sand when you know that that's happening, or you take a step back and look and go, yeah, that's happening, I should do something about it. Or just, oh, it's fine, it's just a phase, all these kind of things. That's basically ignoring the signs. The second thing that doesn't work is, believing that it's impossible to change, or trying to just make peace with that's who you are, that's how things are. I will never change. If you try and just make peace with that and say that's just the way things are, things will be fine, which I have a tendency, or had a tendency to do, was be so laid back that I didn't need to take any action. It's just everything will be fine, everything will work out. It's cool, I'm not meant to be this person who's, up and at it and getting things done and taking action and building and being ambitious and driven. And I mean, it's cool. No everybody's like that, and it's all right. Things will be fine. That does not work to help you with where you're at. That that belief, if you make peace with that and let it sink into your identity, that's not a good place to be. The third point here is thinking it was other people's fault or responsibility. Now, I don't have a person in particular or a group of people that I blamed for the way I was. But in situations, in isolated incidents, when it was like, say for instance, my wife being frustrated and bringing something up, it's her fault. She's just annoyed. She needs to do something. She needs to change her thinking. She needs to do this or she needs to do that, rather than look and go, that's actually me. And one thing that I think is important here, and a lesson that I learned, was I was taking everything. So when people said things like this, I was taking this as they are attacking me as a person, rather than they're challenging a behaviour. That behaviour, or a behaviour itself, does not define me. That is a good concept to have, because it just leaded me to be defensive and point the finger back at other people. That's just because that's just you that feels like that, rather than actually being honest with myself. So, yeah, things that don't work, ignoring the signs, believing it's impossible to change, or making peace with the fact that you won't change or can't change, and pointing the blame at other people, or thinking that it's not your responsibility to do something about it and take action. Okay, so moving on to the aha or the light bulb moments. In therapy, one of the big things there's a couple of things that will kind of go through that stand out to me during therapy. So I did CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, for 6 months. And that was every week, 1 hour session every week. So I went in with, I think, one problem, and then discovered I had about 5. But that was good. Again, awareness and self-awareness, and understanding yourself in all these different aspects, because they're pain points. They're pain points you might not even be aware you've really got, but when you look at them and say, yeah, okay, there's a way to reframe these, they help massively in your life, and in your head. So yeah, if I start with therapy, finding out what a core belief is, and that I had a negative core belief, was jarring when I found out what it was, and quite upsetting, but very powerful. I basically came to the conclusion that I had a negative core belief that was, I am worthless. And what actually drives behaviour is, when you've got that core belief, usually your behaviour tries to prove that or disprove that. And it's cognitive connaissance and dissonance is another technical term for it. When you're acting in a way, or acting out what you believe to be true, or acting the opposite of that. So I used to be and go through phases, more so be on the negative side of this, which would be proving my negative core belief of I am worthless. So the binging, the not doing anything, they were all things that were reinforcing that belief that I'm worthless. I would then go through phases of complete, like, 180, and I would be, starting a health kick, starting to eat healthy, but it wouldn't be balanced, it wouldn't be gradually, it would be the flick of a switch. Woke up one day and I'm up at 5 a.m. and I'm out a run and I've done this and I've cleaned the house and I've, every single thing. I've done, and I could keep that up for, a week, 2 weeks, and then boom, it would just all collapse and I would get back into that negative, and it was just a cycle. The positive things were short lived, the negatives were longer, and they were becoming longer in between periods of, months and years in between, eating healthier or starting to exercise or anything like that. So finding that negative core belief and then building a balanced core belief was massive. But even just the discovering it and discovering what it is, because one, I suppose, a tip here that was great and played out in real life was you overreact emotionally to something that isn't that big. So you get super emotional for something that, in normal or under normal circumstances or to other people wouldn't provoke that level of reaction. So I'll go through two things here that actually did happen that helped me with this. One of the things that came up through therapy was what I spoke about at the start. That was in this masculine environment, and broke down in tears. I was on a job offshore on an oil rig, and I was leading a team of welders, and I was effectively had arranged a time to do a job with the person who was, managing the job from the customer's side. And he was quite demanding and quite a harsh person. He was making jokes about, things taking too long and this should be getting done, this quick. And I was joking back, yeah, no problem, blah, blah, blah. But saying, no, it genuinely takes longer. And I was multitasking, doing a few different jobs, and I was late, so I thought, it makes more sense to delay this thing that's arranged here by 5 minutes to get this thing done and get the other team moving on another job, increased efficiency. When I got up to that job, he was not happy that they'd been waiting for 5 minutes, and he just went off in one. You're taking the pee, you're this, you're that, just going off, you're wasting my time, you're wasting other people's time, I've done that, blah blah blah. And I genuinely froze, and I didn't know what to do. I had to I was not assertive, I was passive most of the time, but I never seen an in between passiveness and aggression. So these two extremes are battling with me, which leads me just to freeze and not do anything. So there was a passive of just, be effectively submit to this and head down and almost go like childlike, getting into trouble and really just retreating. Or the second one is, be violent and aggressive to the extreme. And so my brain was fighting in between these things, of, that means losing your job, potentially police involvement, etc., if you do damage, through violence, all this stuff. So I was stuck in between that, and also extremely embarrassed that this was a public thing with a lot of witnesses here and me not doing anything. So I ended up kind of breaking down into tears. And looking back at that, my negative core belief was I was worthless. So as he's shouting at me and attacking my behaviour, he wasn't attacking me as a person, but all I could hear was him saying, "You're worthless, you're worthless." In my brain, that's how my brain was computing. You're worthless, you're worthless, you're worthless because this, that, and the next thing. So that triggered a really high emotional response. Whereas I could have just went, "Look, you're totally wrong. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to be efficient in that. Don't speak to me like that." But that would have been assertiveness in the middle. So that was one of the things that kind of guided us to this worthlessness. And the other thing was, I was having a conversation with my wife, and she said, "Oh, you haven't been, I can't remember the specific thing, right? But it was basically like you've not been doing enough in this area in the last week, and I get really angry. It was like that's shocking. I'm not feeling good. Like, overreacted to it. And what was funny was when I explained this to my therapist, I had came in and started the conversation when he said, "How are you getting on?" I was like, "Ugh, I feel like I'm kind of not performing at the level I want to be. There's things that I've responsibilities that I've kind of got behind on in the last couple of weeks, and I'm annoyed at myself about it, but I should be, I should be doing better." And then when we spoke about this, me overreacting, and he was like, "John, can you ask you a question? When your wife said to you, like, you've been, you've not been doing this, or you haven't really done that enough lately, why did you not say I agree? Is that because she's right? Because you've just told me that, but when somebody else told you that, which is true, overreact, overly emotional, angry, frustrated, again, worthlessness, you can't keep up with your responsibilities." Now, my wife didn't say that, but that's exactly how I took that. So that was a huge moment. Negative core belief, right? Huge. So I know I've spent a bit of time on that, but finding that out and building a balanced core belief was massive. Okay, the next one is there was a worksheet that I went through, and it listed a whole load of activities, basically, which ranged from golfing, driving range, playing football, watching football, fishing, outdoor walks, creating music, playing music, going to see music shows, musical theatre, going to an art museum. There was an exhaustive list, and basically had to score. There was two columns. Score out of 3 in the first column between 1 to 3. How enjoyable this is for you, or you think it would be for you. So there obviously was a lot of things I'd never done. But do you think you would enjoy that? Score it 3 if, yeah, really enjoyable, or for me, watching music or going to see live music or live music concerts. That would be a 3 for me. In the second column, and golfing, just to show you the example, like for instance, golfing would maybe be a 2. I've never done golfing, but I think I would quite like it. Maybe something like a ballet. I don't know, but maybe I would score that one. I don't think I would really enjoy it, but we don't know. But anyways, that was the idea. The second column was, how often do you do this? So 1, like never, or 0 to 1, never. 2, once every few months. And 3 might be more than once in a month, maybe even weekly. So what you were looking for is contrasting things. So are you doing things that are a 1 or a 0, but are a 3, you do them all the time? And then the opposite, is there things that are a 3, so you really enjoy, but you never do them, 0 or 1? Taking a step back and highlighting those, right? Here's the things that you need to be doing more of. These are the things you enjoy, and it's important to do things you enjoy because you get energy from it. It gives you energy, both mental, physically, and emotionally. It gives you energy to give out. So one of them that I noticed I don't ever do was go to music concerts and go to live music things. I love that. Had stopped doing it for years. So me and my wife decided we're going to make a conscious effort, and since then, for the last few years, we go to a lot of gigs and live concerts. That has been a part of, rebuilding or reigniting our relationship and doing enjoyable things together that we both like. But even just for me, doing something more, it gives you energy, it gets you fired up, it gives you that dopamine, it gives you the kind of endorphins and everything to carry you through the hard times. You can't always just be running low on that and not doing things you enjoy. So that was another big one for me in therapy. That kind of enjoyable activities and learning, you need to do more of the things and that doesn't mean it overtakes all responsibilities at all. But if everything you enjoy doing, you're never doing, there's a problem there. You're never going to get that energy and that buzz for the things that you like doing. You should lean into them. That also was the reason I started gigging. Before that, I was a bedroom guitarist, if you will. I played at home. I had zero confidence in myself to go out and play. I played one gig and I emptied the bar and really put me off, confidence knocked, and it was a case of, why don't you start going to open mics or going to jams? You enjoy it, just go and do it. That helped massively, and here I am now. I've played my first 2 weddings in the last couple of weeks, and I play regularly at bars across the country. I'm playing festivals. I'm opening up for a band's album launch at the weekend, and that all led from doing that and going, I need to do more of that. And building confidence as well in other ways. Yeah, the last one that I can remember, and there's probably more, but these are the 3 that came to mind when I was thinking about this. Alcohol, and realising, not that I had a problem with alcohol, by the way, but realising, I suppose this ties into a kind of an overall picture, realising that for instance, I had felt down one day. I was out at walk and I can remember feeling down and, kind of just thinking, why am I so down? I feel rubbish and I feel sad and, ruminating round and round about feeling sad. And it was the next day that I had my therapy session. So when we spoke about that and it was like, oh, you were feeling down, like, do you know why you felt down? I was like, nah, I've just got this feeling I couldn't shake. And, it made me feel worse and worse the more I lingered and thought about that, kept thinking about it, because I had learned what rumination was for anger. Let me just put this on mute so that I hope you didn't hear those notifications. Where was I now? Yes, so about ruminating. So I learned what ruminating was, and I was like, it just kind of made me feel worse and worse because I didn't really, I couldn't think where it came from. She said, what did you do the day before? So I started thinking. I was like, done this, done that. Oh, I actually went out and I had a few beers, and wasn't too late, but I did have quite a few beers and maybe a rum and whatever. And he was like, yeah, alcohol's a depressant, remember? I was like, right, so you need to expect that if you've had some alcohol the next day, you're only going to feel as good as what you would do without that. Now, that doesn't mean that every time you drink alcohol, you're in a depressed state, because I wouldn't say I was extremely depressed, but I just felt down, couldn't put my finger on why, which kind of annoyed me and kind of made me, no spiral, but it kept me down. So fast forward to either weeks or maybe a month later, and I can remember going out the same walk and having the exact same thought of, I feel quite down, I feel quite flat today, I feel quite, and then instantaneously, oh, I was drinking last night, I had a few beers, oh, that makes sense, I'm going to feel down, that's fine, I'll ride the wave, I'll be fine tomorrow. See that, the power of that and letting that go, just, that's why, I understand. So today's going to be a wee bit of a slog, but that's cool, I'll get through it, and tomorrow's a new day. That was huge. That was huge to remember that, and even now, like this morning at the gym, I feel tired, I was up late last night and get less than 6 hours sleep. I now know that I need to have minimum 6, preferably between 7 and 8, to feel good. I was at the gym, felt a bit nauseous, felt a bit sick, felt like, I was yawning in between most sets and just thinking, maximum. Well, there was a maximum recording time, but we learn. So yeah, I just in the gym, sorry, this morning, was thinking like that, and if I didn't know or have the awareness of, oh, it's because of that, that makes sense. Just keep going, ride the wave. That's it. I could have been sitting thinking about that and ruminating and spiraling myself down and down and down. Why do I feel like this? I don't like feeling like this, Da 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 da. Keep coming down. So those are the three therapy things that were huge. It was negative core belief, understand or finding out what it was, understanding how to build a balanced core belief. The enjoyable activities, do more of the things you enjoy because it gives you energy physically, mentally, and emotionally. And then the awareness of when you feel down, things that can make you feel down, lack of sleep, lack of rest, not eating right, alcohol, anything else like that can bring you down. Just ride the wave. That was huge. Okay. Second point here is a light bulb moment when it comes to faith. So I'm a Christian, and building a faith for me was a big part as well, because what it really did for me was what I do in this life actually matters, and it's something that's bigger than me. So it's important to be the best person you can be and uphold standards. And that for me was a kind of two-edged sword. So it was good, and I felt like, right, it does matter, it's good to do it, because you're getting like what I'm doing with my life, whether I'm being nice to somebody, I'm helping somebody out, I'm trying to be kind, I'm trying to be compassionate, I'm providing for my wife, for my family, etc., etc. This all matters beyond just me feeling like doing that. This matters. So that was a big point as well. But almost a negative side of that, which was within me, was at times I really battled with expecting myself to be perfect, doing everything right all the time, 24/7. And that, I would beat myself up to a pulp. But realizing that God doesn't expect me to be perfect, this is all from me, and giving myself some slack and some realization that you don't need to be perfect and that's okay. That was a huge moment and a lot of weight off my shoulders, because the kind of guilt side of it, that if you let guilt get a hold of you, it can beat you to a pulp. But it was very unbalanced. When I kind of had that realization of, there's a scripture that says, for he remembers your dust. And it was like, what do you expect from a speck of dust? What do you expect from a speck of dust? Absolutely nothing. But if it did something cool, even minuscule, you'd be like, wow, that's amazing. A bit of dust done that. That's how God views us. And that, to me, was remembering that and that sinking in, was like, wow, here I am beating myself up if I don't do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, X, all the way through X, Y, Z every single day, relentlessly, without giving up, and, feeling amazing and happy about it all. Nothing was ever going to be good enough. So that was a huge aha moment. That was a huge light bulb moment. Realising that realisation sinking in was massive for me. Okay, the last thing that I've got, music as well. Deciding to use songwriting to process emotions. So I've experienced quite a lot of grief from people close to me over the past, say, 10 years approximately. So from my I'd say roughly 20 to 30, or 20s to 30s, where I am now, there was a lot of emotions there, and I don't think I really knew or had anything to process them. And learning to write things down about how I felt on paper, and people do this through journaling, people do it through poetry, like any sort of creative thing, or just keeping a diary, but getting it out and on paper. But for me, with my love of music and how much music impacts me, spiritually, emotionally, everything, mentally, music's a huge part of my DNA and who I am. Processing that, and then also, so using songwriting as that and saying, well, I should set time aside to songwrite, to, capture my view of the world or get these feelings that I'm feeling out onto paper and try and explain them, etc. It just helps release them. So that's one side of it. And then setting goals round about something I loved, like music. So rather than music just being this, unguided escapism, which is totally fine to be, what did I want to do? Did I want to, play a gig? Because at that point in time, I wasn't at the stage of being able to play a gig in a bar. So it was like, okay, how do we get there? Do you know enough songs? Do you know enough crowd pleasing songs? What kind of songs do people in bars want to hear? Because they don't want to hear just the songs that I like. You'll need to learn to learn. You'll need to learn to learn. Songs that you don't necessarily like, but the majority of people really like. Let's set goals round about that. Okay, so can I go through every single song that I know, maybe 10, 15, 20. Can we get that to 50? So that you've got a good repertoire that you can, go out to people. Can you learn some of the main crowd pleasers? Okay. There we go. There's goal. Learn them. Start going to open mics and getting confidence around performing those songs. Then when you've done that, it's like, okay, reach out to a couple of local places. I'm going to gig. Here's a wee get some videos from the open mic. Progressively setting those goals around something that I enjoyed doing. That was like a light bulb moment to go, okay, it gives me something to work towards. It gives me direction. It gives me a bit of purpose and intent behind things rather than just directionless. I'm not going anywhere. Now, sometimes it's good to sit and do that and just noodle on a guitar and just play about. But when you do that constantly all the time with no direction, you don't feel like you're getting anywhere. So again, it just impacts and builds on this feeling stuck, not going anywhere, no direction. So yeah, those have been long, but hopefully you'll see that, yeah, those are the kind of light bulb moments for me and maybe you'll find something similar yourself, or maybe they'll make sense. I hope that you take something from that. I know there was a lot of information there. Okay, so the final part of it is wrapping up what you guys can expect from future episodes. So it's going to be all things mindset, personal growth, tips, tricks, ideas, things that have helped me, frameworks, tools. That's going to be, I suppose, the core. This is about mindset. This is average John. I'm just your average John. But you can build an exceptional mindset. You can build an above average mindset. You don't need to be anything special. You don't need to be a guru to, have a good mindset, to have confidence, to have clarity, to have direction. So this is going to be things, and we'll explore these different types of ideas, all surrounding mindset and personal growth. The second is book reviews and recommendations. So I have, in the last few years, read quite a lot of self-help, mindset, habits, performance, these type of books, and they've built my understanding of how the mind works, personality, behaviours, and my plan is to review them, go back over the ones that I've done already, and maybe take out the kind of core lessons that helped for me, and if I recommend it, or maybe score it. And as I continue to read, because that is what I read week in and week out, I read personal development books. There's lots of them. So yeah, being able to go back over them and explore the ideas and explain, because another thing that helps you to retain information for things to sink in is to teach it to someone else. So if I read The Chimp Paradox, which I did, that was one of the first books in a long time I read cover to cover, just couldn't get enough of it, hooked into it. For instance, the two parts of the brain, the chimp brain and the human brain. The chimp, as a chimp, is physically 20 times stronger than the human. The chimp is very much a primitive driven, it leans towards aggression, satisfaction, rules of the jungle, all these kind of things. So it's like it can kind of hijack your emotions and take over your rationale or your rash thinking human brain. Just by repeating and telling those ideas, they sink further in and give you more understanding and clarity on them. So that's good for me, and hopefully it's good for you too. So there will be book reviews and recommendations in the podcast too. Personal progress and vlogs. I want to be extremely open and honest. I don't want to have this I'm a guru, I know everything, I want it to be real. I want it to be, yeah, there's things I'm going to struggle with. There's times I'm going to feel on top of the world. There's times I'm going to feel down, and I'm going to need to really lean into habits and tools that hopefully we'll have learned about and taught in other episodes, to move forward. Life happens to everyone, so there's going to be things that will come up in life that will be a challenge, and I think it gives me a massive amount of accountability and also relatability, that you don't need to be perfect 24/7, because I know I can't be the only one that has battles with that perfectionism. So that's going to be another aspect of it, is just personal progress vlogs. I'm still on my journey. I still want to, I don't think that journey will ever end, to get better, to feel fitter, to feel, more confident, to feel more calm, to be more in control of my emotions, to work on my marriage, to make that better, to be a better husband, to be a better son, to be a better brother, to be a better friend. That, I think, is going to be another core. It's going to be open, honest, authentic. That's the whole idea behind this podcast and brand, is Average John. There is going to be some music thrown in. I, again, do something you enjoy. I enjoy making music. I enjoy making music content. So I will link that in. I'll try my best to link that in. Let me know what you want to see more of. I've done a few short things, short episodes, if you will, like lyrics in life. So it'd be like music and mindset. Thinking about songs and their emotional impact, or songwriting, etc. I feel it's good to incorporate that, because that is me. That's who I am. And the last part of it, guest speakers and conversations. Now, that's something I'm looking at future. I would like to just get going, get used to things, build the skill set, and then start speaking to people. And I'm not going to have like only certain types of people. I do want it to be for the benefit of you viewers, who I bring on, but my plan would be probably people that have, been in similar position or struggle with this and overcome, and learn how they've managed to get through things, because everyone's different. And again, I feel that'd be valuable to have other concepts, other ideas of how people have overcame things, or systems and tools that can help, and just have kind of conversations surrounding self development, personal growth. Everything else at this channel will combine the books, etc. I think it's good to just have conversations with like-minded individuals, and yeah, hopefully I can teach maybe them some things and learn some things from those guests too. So that's the plan. So that has been episode 1. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you've got to the end of the video, if you've enjoyed it, if this sounds up your street, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you would like to see more of if you've enjoyed it, if you feel there's certain parts you'd like to see more of. But yeah, until that, thank you very much for watching the first episode of the Average John podcast, and I'll see yous in the next one.